Welcome to Retailistic, the official podcast of Coresight Research for November 11th, 2025. This week, CEO Deborah Weinswig welcomes another legend of commerce, Mitch Modell. They discuss the rise and fall of the country's oldest family-owned sporting goods store, the complicated relationship between brands and retailers, and the titanic impact AI will have on retail in the U.S. But before we hear from the legend, Isla is here from the London office with highlights of the latest research publishing this week on Coresight.com.
This week, we're exploring some of the biggest developments shaping retail, technology, and consumer behavior worldwide. We'll start with a look at how agentic AI is redefining commerce, showing how retailers can tap into the next wave of automation, create truly intelligent, self-learning shopping experiences. Then, we'll turn to China, where consumer confidence is rebounding, signaling a shift in spending habits and optimism heading into the final stretch of the year. And finally, we'll tackle a serious challenge for the industry: retail crime and shrink, with facial recognition tech on the rise, even as theft rates climb in parts of the UK. From cutting-edge AI to shifting consumer trends and operational realities, this week's reports offer the insights you need to stay ahead.
Thanks, Isla. Now here's Deborah and Mitch.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for another session of Retailistic. We are so honored to have my good friend Mitch Modell joining us. Mitch, thank you so much.
My pleasure. I'm a big fan of your, Deborah's.
I appreciate that. So today we're going to dive deeply into Mitch's story, legacy, leadership, and lessons learned, and there's a lot to unpack. So we'll do our best to move it along. And probably we'll need to have Mitch on for another episode because there's so much to cover. So, Mitch, can you bring us back to just the very beginning of Modell's? And it was great preparing for this because I got to see a lot of black and white photos and whatnot. But maybe what was the catalyst to start the company from your family's perspective? And then did you have the same perspective, or how do you think about the origins?
So the company was started by my great-grandfather, Morris Modell, who had 7 sons. One of the sons, Henry, was my grandfather. The 6 other sons, they all started in the Modell business, which was one store at 19 Cortlandt Street, downtown where the World Trade Center was. And it was a pushcart operation. He came from Russia, set up a pushcart when people came off Ellis Island. He would sell haberdasheries, T-shirts, shorts, socks, and that's how we started. And so his son, Henry, then took us into the Army and Navy surplus business after World War I. When the government had so much surplus of military items, we decided to go into the military surplus days, and that's what we sold. We sold guns, ammo, T-shirts, shorts, anything that you could buy during the military. Then he had a son, which was my father, Bill, and he took us in 1963, when we had 4 stores, he bought the Vegas sporting goods stores. So we went from 4 stores to 8 stores with the Vegas purchase. And at the same time, he opened up an operation called Modell Shoppers World in 1954, which was really the start of the discount department stores before Walmart, Target, any of these names were heard. The only one that was heard was Kmart. They were our biggest competitor. And what it was leased apartments within Modell's sporting goods. From there, we then took over, Polly Brothers and Herman's, and transitioned from Army and Navy surplus to discount to sporting goods, what it was up until 2020.
And as you saw that evolution of products sold, how did the relationship with the customer change, and how did the customer themselves change?
Well, our whole business was centered around the customer. The customer was king, and, as styles, as the industry changed, we changed along with it. That's one of the biggest things in retail, being able to adapt to change, embracing the consumer's, taste levels. Obviously, Amazon changed the whole paradigm in retail. So it's an evolutionary process that retailers face with every day.
And I can't wait. I can't help myself. I just have to jump in. Why, as I prepared for this pod and did a bunch of research on the sporting goods industry itself, it's just littered with, tragedy after tragedy. I think Modell's, right, really, if you look at it, made it unbelievably long compared to everybody else. I mean, Sports Authority went out in 2016. Why is this industry so complex? Let's start there.
So in 2016, right? You had really four major players. You had Dick's, you had Sports Authority, you had Big Five, and you had Academy. And then you had a lot of regional companies like us, MC Sporting Goods, Dunham's, MVP Sports, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what happened in 2016, Sports Authority went bankrupt, and then six other companies within 6 months went bankrupt. MVP, MC Sports, Galleons. And so Nike got very, very nervous and said, listen, there's something going on in the sporting goods industry. Let's run the top 100 companies that we do business with around the world, and let's really diagnose who's late, what's happening, how's their business. And that's when it all started to tumble. When they found out in 2017, when they did the analysis, and they called me up and they go, is this Mitch Modell? I said, yes. Hi, I think his name was Steve. I'm the CFO from Nike. I go, wow, I never spoke to a CFO before of anybody, particularly Nike. I go, is there something wrong? I know we're on ACH. Were we ever late a day with our bills? He goes, oh, no, I'm not calling about that. He goes, where did you get this 120 days dating? I said, that's grandfathered by Gary DeStefano, the president, and Charlie Denson, the CEO. I go, we did that deal years ago when we purchased Herman Sporting Goods. They gave us dating in order for us to really finance our acquisition. He goes, well, we're not your bank, and you got to pay it down in 30 days. And we owed them at the time $35 million. We had unlimited credit with Nike. We had unlimited credit with everybody. I said, pay it down. He goes, yeah, we want to pay it down to $3.5 million. I said, that's impossible. I go, well, I'll go bankrupt. Well, you got to decide what you want to do. Anyway, we worked it out with them. They gave us a year to pay it down, but we had to mortgage a lot of our properties that we owned to take out the cash to pay down Nike.
Wow. I never knew that before. I mean, I felt like there was a change. And it seems also too, right, when Nike decided to pull away from all retail distribution, like just where they thought they stood in the landscape, maybe, just maybe, isn't where they actually were at the end of the day.
Well, so what happened was when Phil Knight brought in Donahue and, all the people like Elliot Hill, who's the current CEO of Nike, who's brilliant, and I think he's going to do a great job in turning around the company now. He gets it. But Donahue, his background was eBay. And his whole thing was, we're going to go direct to the consumer. Why do we need retailers? And, Nike doesn't work that way. Nike is like a club. And, he came outside the club and he tried to take relationships that Nike has built for years with all retailers. And I knew the handwriting was on the wall when they started in Europe, when they started to shut down accounts. And I said, this is not going to be good. I go, this is going to start as a test in Europe, and then they're going to bring it to the U.S. And we were a valued house operation. Dick's, Ed Stack runs an incredible operation, high-end, prestigious, authenticity. We catered to the blue-collar worker. We catered to the masses. We believed in giving value day in and day out to the customer, which was really opposite what Nike really wanted to do. But again, when we bought Herman's in 96, part of our deal was getting extra dating and getting a mix of closeouts, which represented up to 25% of our overall buy. And that made us different than all the other retailers. We were hybrid. We sold inline shoes, Air Force, Jordans, LeBrons, and then we sold, Nike T-shirts, 2 for $25 or whatever it was, any closeouts that we bought. And that's what separated us. But, at that time, they decided, you know what? You're going to be authentic. No more closeouts. We have our own outlet stores. We have TJ Maxx, Marshalls, Ross stores to sell to. We need you to be authentic and carry inline merchandise. We knew that was the kiss of death. And by the way, it was the right thing for Nike, but it wasn't the right thing for Modell's. And they were such a big part of our business that we had no choice.
Interesting. And so did you ever develop your own private label?
Yes. So, as we went on off-site retreats every year, looking at, what are we going to do this year, the next 3 years, the next 5 years, we knew in order to survive, we had to go and be private label as much as possible. We tried to run as fast as we could. We bought the Smith license, where we basically knocked off Timberland boots. It was our workwear line. We knocked off Dickies. You could take our Timberland boot that we sold for $150, and if you put your thumb over the tree, the Timberland tree, and compared it to our Smith's boot, which was $49.99. One was 150, one was 49.99. You know, our number one seller was Smith line jeans that we'd sell in the wintertime for $20. And so we built Smiths and we built a brand called Unipro. Unipro was a knockoff of Nike, of Adidas, of Under Armour, giving our customers the opportunity. Do you want to pay $30 for a t-shirt or you want to pay $10 for a t-shirt? And our margins with Unipro and Smiths were in the 60s and 65% initial, unlike our regular margins, which were like 50, 52 with the brands. We couldn't go fast enough. And unfortunately, you know, when we ran into problems, the factors and all our Smith products were factored, the factors cut us down on our credit that it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I want to continue on this thread, right? We also saw, if we start to think about brands, right? We saw Under Armour, which had been kind of the hottest thing since sliced bread. And I remember as an analyst talking to people, and they're like, they just can't break through, right? That like $5 billion kind of roof. What do you think happened there?
So Kevin Plank, dear friend, we started with him in the beginning. When people in our Philadelphia stores would call up and say, we're getting calls for Under Armour. I go, listen, well, that's not our business. He goes, what do you mean it's not our business? We're not into like the swords and the hats and the helmets. He goes, no, it's the t-shirt company. They sell t-shirts. I go, what do you mean? They keep coming in for Under Armour. I called the managers all on the phone in Philadelphia, got them on a conference call. I said, the next time a customer comes in wearing an Under Armour t-shirt, give him a gift card, give him a $25 gift card, go in his neck and look at the RN number. And the RN number, the registered number, would tell us who the manufacturer is. We didn't know what Under Armour was. They wrote down the number. I called Kevin cold turkey. We met in the Atlanta at the Super Show, fell in love with each other, and Kevin's been a great friend ever since. And so what happened to Under Armour is, you know, a few things happened. The main thing is Kevin was really an apparel company, not a footwear company. And if you look at Nike's business and everyone's business, the ratio between footwear and apparel, he was like 90% apparel, 10% footwear, and can never figure it out right. You know, Nike owned that world. They own the basketball world, they own the training, they own running, they own everything. Really, really tough to break through. And, you know, when Kevin decided to sell Kohl's, it disrupted the whole sporting goods industry. We were no longer special. Our margins with Under Armour was 52% maintained. We never took markdowns. And once he sold Kohl's, even though it wasn't as good as product as the rest of the sporting goods channel, it just put too much product in the market. And that's what really hurt the brand.
So I remember when that happened, I was surprised at the time and, you know, thought about it from an analysis standpoint, right? Based on increased points of distribution. But if you're selling more at, you know, kind of the magic Kohl's like 40 off, what did that look like? And do you think there ended up being a bit of over distribution? So let's look at Dick's, which obviously with the Foot Locker acquisition, I mean, they seem to have kind of permeated through. What's made them special?
What's made it special is one guy, Ed Stack, who we had a love-hate relationship with. But today I have tremendous respect for Ed. Ed was all about leverage. He used his volume and he negotiated with the CEOs of every manufacturer the way I did, except he had the pencil. I had a mini pencil. I had the Northeast pencil, which is why we expanded in the Northeast. We wanted to be the dominating player on the 5 corridor. Ed was a national brand. So when Ed goes and speaks to the CEO of Adidas and says, I want superstars, okay? And he gets them. And I say, I want superstars. No, that's not for sporting a channel. Well, what about Ed Stack? We can't afford not to sell Ed. Ed said we either sell him or he's cutting us out. And so, you know, when you have that kind of power, God bless him, he was able to leverage that power and get items and brands that we couldn't get. He'd get exclusives 3 months in advance, and God bless him. We try to do the same thing, but on a much smaller scale.
So maybe, I mean, just like the timing of everything as it happened was interesting in retrospect, right? But maybe take us through because it had to be, right, because it also carried the family name, that those had to be some very difficult decisions near the end. Can you talk about kind of like when you knew that your back was up against a wall? Who did you turn
Yes.
to? who offered you advice, and how did you ultimately make the decision?
So the big squeeze, again, cash is king. We always paid our bills on time to vendors and to landlords, never late. That was like a Mitchellism. You were never late with vendor. Listen, we were tough as nails, but our word was our bond. If we said we're going to put it out for a certain price, we never go below that. But in 2016 and 2017, when Nike took our credit down, took our payment terms down from 120 to 30 days, and then in 2019, March 11th at 11:15, we get a Wall Street Journal email to our PR guy, Jason, and says, we're doing a story on Modell's. We understand they overexpanded. They understand they got financial problems. We understand they hired a restructuring company, and they're looking at all options, including filing for bankruptcy. We need a response by 2 o'clock or the article's going out. Justin comes
Hmm.
downstairs to me. I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to get the PR firm on the phone. I call them up and I go, all right, here are the 10 questions that they're going to probably ask me. Here are my answers. Then he goes, no, 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 no. We're not responding. I said, we have to respond. I got to control the narrative. They're saying I'm going to go bankrupt. I go, my friend Brandon from Toys R Us went through the same thing. They announced Toys R Us could possibly file, and the next day, everybody shut him down. I
Yeah.
go, I can't go through that. He goes, listen, I'm in business 40 years. If you're going to call and call back the reporter, I'm resigning from the account. And with that, I met with all my key executives, my direct reports. We had the PR firm on the phone, and they all ganged up against me. And I said, all right, if you guys feel this wrongly, I think it's wrong. And at 5 o'clock, headlines, is Modell's filing bankruptcy. At 5:01, every factor called me up, they're shutting me off. Every vendor, they're shutting me off. Every truck that was on the way is shutting me off. Every lease I had in the works was canceled. My world turned upside down. Okay. By the way, my fault. I should have stuck to my guns and stuck to my gut. But you know what? It is what it is. Biggest mistake I ever made. And the rest was history. So what did I do?
Yeah.
Nike, at that time, I think we owed them $6.7 million. I put in personally $6.8 million and got every vendor on the phone, every landlord on the phone. Every week, I'd have 500 people on a phone call and say, listen, I'm not filing, okay? Well, we can't ship you. We don't want to get caught in a clawback. You know, if you ship within 30 days, they file, you lose the money. I said, I'm not filing. I'm stroking a $6.8 million check, okay, as an unsecured creditor at the bottom of the barrel, and I will not get paid back until every vendor gets paid back. And so that calmed the waters. They say I was the only retailer to ever have an article like that and survive. Normally you go, you know, you tumble upside down, inside out. And, you know, the unfortunate part is everyone kept saying, what is Nike doing? What is Nike
Yeah.
doing? If Nike will go along with you, what is Nike doing? And unfortunately, Nike got so burnt with Sports Authority where, you know, they told them the same thing.
I remember
Don't
that.
worry, we're not going bankrupt. And it cost them $85 million. And
I,
so I
rem-
was
I
a
remember that.
victim of Sports Authority's demise. And, you know, look, if I was Nike, I would do the same thing to us. You know, we respected the decision. And so, you know, we survived a year till December of 2019. And what happened? Every team got knocked out of the playoffs. That year, we bought about 150,000 units of closeouts that we had printed that we were able to run at 50 off and still make 50%. Except
Wow.
our customers, they buy for need. If a team is great, they'll pay regular price. If a team is lousy, you can't give it away. So no teams made the playoffs. One of the warmest winters we ever had. And we were a needs-based business. If it's cold out,
Yeah.
customers come at a regular price. I could be a 50 off and 80 degrees, they're not buying. It's 20 degrees, they come in, they buy at regular price. And so when you look at the weather, when you look at the teams, when you looked at, I was no longer relevant because closeouts were now next to Marshalls and TJ Maxx, and people saying, why am I paying half the price and you're at regular price? Then you had the Amazon factor. Then you had the direct to consumer. Nike at that time said, we're going public statement, we're going DTC, direct to the
Yeah.
consumer, and we're cutting out the retailer. When you add all those things and plus the factors, cut my credit line down to like $1.5 million. I needed 10 million. And
Yeah.
so when your inventory drops 50 million, You can't make it up. And the lesson learned that I tell everybody, the number one lesson I ever learned, whether you're a manufacturer or whether you're a retailer, never let anybody be more than 20% of your overall business.
Yeah.
Because if they get a hiccup or they decide to change course, you build your infrastructure, you build your organization around it. And on top of that, minimum wage doubled in 3 years. So now I'm paying my help twice as much. And what happened with real estate taxes? The
Yeah.
city kept raising real estate taxes. So when when my real estate percentage goes from 6 to 17%, and your payroll gets doubled, and you're now in a situation where I became irrelevant, that's what happened to Modell's.
And so you still operate the website today, correct?
No. Our website was bought out by Ty Lopez at bankruptcy. He paid $3.6 million. He just got served by the SEC $112 million fraud. He's going to probably wind up, serving time or whatever. And then it was bought by a guy by the name of Raj in the Midwest before my brand and Dress Barn and Pier 1 Imports. This guy, Raj, put in a lot of money. And before it went to Chapter 7, he bought it, including our name. We tried to work a deal, but it didn't work out. He wanted too much money. So now he runs it. It runs as a third party. I called every one of my vendors. Would they sell me if I bought the IP? And they said, absolutely not. I said, I'd rather have you tell me no than lie to me. And they go, Mitchell, we love you. We're not selling your closeouts. We have our own outlet stores. And now you're a Chapter 11 brand. We've got our own distribution. So we moved on. He never did his homework. He never called any of the brands to find out they wouldn't sell them. So if you go on our website now, it's horrible.
And so as you take a big step back and think about what you can do to mentor some of these younger brands today, and some of them, right, they are D2C only, they go from online to offline or offline to online. How much time do you spend with some of these younger brands? And then how do you see the landscape evolving, maybe in ways that others aren't?
I think two things. You got to ask, what is the reason for your existence, right? I always ask myself, every day I would wake up, if Modell's went out of business tomorrow morning, who would miss us and why? And I said, they'll never allow us to go out of business, ever. We created a bond. We created a culture, a community with our people. When people say, what do you miss most about Modell's? I miss the most when the Yankees won the World Series and the whole city celebrated and we opened up right after the game, or we'd open up at 5 a.m. and it just brought the whole city together. 9/11, right? When Arizona played New York, and I was fortunate enough to be the chairman of the New York City Sports Commission with Rudy Giuliani, the greatest mayor in New York, and going out to Arizona on the team plane with him. Those are moments that we cherish. That's probably the biggest thing that I miss is the celebration. Whether it be the Bronx Bombers going to the Little League World Series or Tom's River, and we would have buses and we, bring the people there. Or Sandy Storm, we donated, 4 trailers of merchandise for all the people in Sandy Storm. And we never did a press conference.
Wow.
Never did it for the press. We did it because we always were taught to give back to the community in which they serve. Our customers, everything we did was based around the customer.
And do you feel that today brands and retailers are more or less focused on the customer? Where does the creator come in? Just where do you think their heads are at, and what advice do you have for them more generally?
Well, if you look at all the winning retailers, who are they? They give tremendous value, right? And no one could compete. No one can compete with Costco. No one can compete with Walmart, right? No one can compete with Marshalls, right? Surprise and Delight, TJ Maxx, Home Goods. They built brand. When you say if you went out of business tomorrow morning, who would miss you? Think about it. Would Starbucks ever go out? Would Disney ever go out? The customers wouldn't allow it. Unfortunately, we put ourselves in a position where we allowed ourselves to go out because we became irrelevant. So what I would tell retailers is, what's your secret sauce? What's the white space no one's doing? How do you compete against these monsters? And it's all about, how do you service the customer? How do you treat the customer? The customer is loyal. Are you building your business model through the customer's eyes or through someone else's eyes? We always looked at a customer And what we do was centered around the customer. How will the customer feel if we did this? What would the customer react if we did that? And that was the focus of everything we did. And I think a lot of people walked away from that. You know, the customer is king. I always said the customer is the only one that could fire Mitch Modell, the CEO of Modell Sporting Goods. They go, how? How could they fire you? By not showing up. They don't show up to the stores, they fire you. That's what happens. And so you got to build a model. You know, you got to be vertical in today's world. If you're not vertical, if you're not sourcing direct, you know, or you're not doing something special, something that someone else doesn't have, you can't be a Me Too guy in a Me Too world and expect to survive. Won't happen. Amazon makes it so easy. By the way, I never shopped Amazon in my life until Modell's was closed and COVID came. I didn't know how to do it. Everyone said, oh, Amazon, Amazon. Today I bought scribble text pads, right? Dozen. Shipped within 2 hours. I had it 2 hours in my door. I normally have to go to Staples, drive 20 minutes, go upstairs.
Yeah, well, and
They make it so easy. So people have to build a business model that could defend against the Amazons of the world.
it's so interesting you bring this up because also, being in New York City and with the continued growth, I think there was just a report out on the increase in the amount of not only amount of organized retail crime, but the increase in violence. And so you start to have people who are right. There is a bit of, like, I have to say, even though I'm in the stores all the time, like I said to my family, I'm like, just be on alert, right? When you're in the stores, right? You need, right? Being a New Yorker, you already are, but just be even like more so. And I do think that what we realized during the pandemic is just what social beings we all are. And that's why I think I came out of that thinking that I know there was a lot of people on different camp, but I'm like, I think the stores are going to be even more important, right? Community is important, bringing people together. And that's what stores do. And we continue to see, right, Gen Z, right, versus millennials, right? Their kind of in-store participation rate is actually almost, 2,000 basis points higher. So as we think about like the whole sporting goods industry has changed, right? There's so much more of it that's experiential. And you think about like health and wellness and, companies like Equinox, right? I mean, how do you, as you take a big step back and look at the whole kind of like health and wellness sector, how do you think we see that continue to evolve?
Everybody's in it.
Yeah.
Everybody's in health and wellness. You go into CVS, you see Walgreens, they carry all these, neoprenes, these wristbands, these all these fitness items. They never carried this before. You go into Home Goods and Marshalls during the Christmas time. They carry a lot of fitness items. Look what happened to Five Below. When we went out and a lot of regional retailers went out, Five Below was brilliant. They set up a whole sporting goods business that they built. $5 basketballs, $5 soccer balls, $5 everything. And so, the customer is king. And in today's world, it's if you don't look at the business through the customer's eyes, how do you make it easier for them to shop? How do you make them want us to shop? Look at Spirit. Look at Spirit Halloween, even Silverstein. Brilliance. Right?
Brilliant.
Party City went down. This guy is controlling the whole world.
Oh my
Controlling
gosh.
the whole world.
Well, that
Because he
was
gets
like
it.
a dark day. It was a Friday. I remember because we had all these holiday parties and you have like Big Lots and Party City on the same day. And I sent, God bless her, I sent my daughter across the park to go take photos of like the Party City. And it's like you've been in there as a customer, but you're right, as a New Yorker, you're just getting what you're getting and getting out. And like looking at it through her camera, like she's got a very good eye, looking at it through her camera's lens. I mean, like the floors were stained. I mean, it was just a sad store. And I know you know what I mean, right? It was.
You could feel when someone's going
Yeah.
out. It smells like death.
Yeah.
Okay. The associates weren't motivated. Again, you had a guy who built the company, Jerry Rittenberg, and he was brilliant. He was brilliant. He built Party City. He understood it. Every year, he was on my board of directors, board of advisors. Terrific guy. He would build, okay, what's next? What's next? He was a true merchant. Then they fired him. The board fired him and said, listen, we're getting out of the wholesale business. Okay, wholesale business. Let's sell all the wholesale. That's what made him special. He was vertical. And so they didn't understand it. And didn't take long. They destroyed that company.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, one thing on the personal side, Mitch, is you and I are both involved in YPO. How have you leaned on other leaders and friends and whatnot from a YPO perspective to get you through the good times and maybe the less good? And then to kind of reinvent yourself?
So YPO, I've been a member since 19. It's funny, when I joined YPO, I was one of the youngest kids there. My brother and I both joined YPO, may he rest in peace, in 1987. When we took over Poly Brothers in Philadelphia, I was the president of the Philadelphia operation, and he was president of the New York operation, just so we could both be in YPO. And then eventually I was in New York chapter, he was in the Long Island chapter. YPO changed my life. I mean, before YPO, we never did a business plan. We never had a strategy. We didn't understand core values, went to Ritz-Carlton seminars, went to Disney seminars, went to public speaking seminars, went to Kellogg School of Marketing for 6 months, went to every retailing seminar, built great relationships. And so YPO is something, when I tell people, if you have the qualifications, it changed our business. We went from 18 million to 650 million in YPO. And I attribute most of it to YPO, the learning, the education, and the networking. And I leaned on a lot of YPOs, Stu Leonard, who's a great retailer, YPO, you know, a lot of people, very supportive. But you know what? At the end of the day, I never look back.
Yeah.
The day
I'm
we
the same.
filed,
Yeah.
March 11th, 2020, I was with my boys. We're in court, and we drove back into the city. We went like past 5 of our stores, and I said, guys, you want the good news or the bad news? What's the good news? I'm getting a place in Florida. Well, that's great. What's the bad news? I'm moving permanently. I cannot see my stores. This was Modell's, bankrupt, out of business, not there. This is where we used to be. And so it's time to move on. And now I built with my boys MMM3 Consulting Group, which, using my network of 30,000 contacts. And I'm on a lot of different businesses that we love, where we use our contacts and connect people.
Yeah, which is so valuable. I mean, I'll tell you, I had a conversation with, I think he was network chair at the time for the retail network, and I remember him just saying to me, "How are you not in YPO?" I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, and I know there are a lot of people around me, especially in Asia, who were very involved, and so that was kind of the catalyst, if you will. And I'll say, it goes back to, right, all of our days. I mean, I'm I'm an insanely positive person, but there are days that are less kind of sunny than others. And I've found that when you can lean on people, and you don't want to bring your I mean, hey, for you, your family, like, it was a family business, but you want to be able to talk to people about your kind of like deepest, darkest fears. And also, when you're like, wow, I had this idea, do you think there's something to it? Right. So it's like the insanely positive and the insanely like less positive. I do think that having that network and people to lean on who truly genuinely care about you, I found, Mitch, that has gotten me through, especially during like the pandemic. It was, a challenge for many of us. I mean, it was interesting because during the pandemic, you were basically rebuilding yourself, right?
Correct. Well, unfortunately, which is a lesson to all your listeners, I was diagnosed with stage 3C melanoma. And so they gave me 20% chance to live 5 years. Had it not been for COVID, and I had not been with my ex-wife at a home in the Hamptons, and I said, I want to go to your stepson and take, some skin off, whatever. And he goes, what's this on your arm? I don't like the way it looks. And so calls me 10 days later. You got to come to Memorial. We got to operate on you. And the lesson learned is, if you're a male or a female, go to a dermatologist once a year. I never went in my life. Had I not gone, I would have been dead in 6 months. So the guy upstairs, get a colonoscopy. I just had my last one last week, and PSA tests. And so those are the 3 things that you could control. And you know what? What saved my life during this whole process, a lot of people say, oh my God, I've never seen someone so happy who's got stage 3C melanoma. I said, listen, if my time is there, it's time to go. But I went to a Tony Robbins seminar in December prior to that. This was December of 2021. And he advertised in West Palm Beach, and he was sold out. Couldn't get in. Who did I call? I called Kevin Plank from Under Armour. Kevin, I know you're best friends with Tony. You got to get me into a seminar. I want to go as a VIP. I really want to understand them, because I was always traveling. I never had the time to go to a 4-day seminar. And so I drove every day from South Beach to West Palm Beach to listen to him. And I'll never forget, there was a gal from Mexico, no family. She had no money, homeless, and he had her in front of 10,000 people. And he said, what are you thankful for? Every morning, every night, I want you to state 3 things that you were thankful for. And that's what I did. I'm thankful that I had the wherewithal to get the top doctors and Memorial to save my life. I was thankful that I had family and friends and an ex-wife that was so supportive. And I was thankful that I was still alive and that I was around. And I said to myself, you know what? I'm only going to be around positive energy people.
Yeah.
I'm only going to be around people. It gave me a death sentence and it gives you a true life sentence that, you know what? The most precious thing we have is time. Spend the time with people that you love, that are smart, that are bright, that are not jealous of you. They want you to win. And I got rid of a lot of friends and a lot of family members as a result. And I've never been happier.
It's funny you say that. I went to, my mom actually took me to a canyon ranch, like a 3 or 4 day. And I'd been under a lot of stress at work. And so I did this like stress reduction package or whatever. And I'd never like talked to a mental health professional. So that was like part of the package. It was fascinating because, you just went through like, what's stressing you out or what your schedule's like. And this person said to me, you have to give yourself permission to say no, right? Which is not, I'm a pleaser. So that's not really in my dictionary. And she said, it's not only no to things that people want you to do or where people want you to go, but she's like, there's also going to be people who are going to go into the no category. And so I will tell you, Mitch, that was like a weight lifted off of me. And I literally came out of there and I started to rethink a lot of things, but certainly kind of that positive energy pocket. And I think you and I are both extreme extroverts. And so I think that we pick up on the energy of others in a very different way than probably 95% of the population is not experiencing, right? Because if I'm sitting with somebody who's negative, like I can physically feel myself kind of less positive. And so I think that for probably our physical and mental health, that's really important. So thank you for sharing all that. And we have to move into our lightning round. So we're in
Let's go.
Our last few minutes. All right. So we got 10 questions. We'll try and get through them all. What was your very first job at Modell's?
My first job at Modell's, I would ride on the Long Island Railroad. I was 10 years old, take a subway to our warehouse, which was at 611 Broadway. And I was helping unload trucks in like 100-degree weather. 100 degree, it was like so hot, and helping drill bowling balls. That was my first job. But I worked every job in the company. From there, I went, order in the store to salesman, to department manager, to floor manager, to assistant manager, to district manager, to regional manager, to an assistant buyer in sundries, to assistant buyer in luggage, to sporting goods, assistant buyer in men's and footwear, and then buyer. And then I became the GMM. And that's where I spent my life in merchandising, marketing, which I loved.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. Number 2, what was the best-selling product in Modell's history?
Best-selling product was Smith jeans, line jeans, denim jeans.
All right. This is a tougher one. Number 3, favorite New York sports team?
Yankees.
Okay. I'm with you there. Followed by the Giants. Number 4, craziest in-store customer story?
Probably when I was an undercover boss. I was in season 4, episode 1, 16, and 17. And I'm in our store on 42nd Street. And I hear the customers like are very upset. And I'm dressed up as Joey Glick in disguise. And the customer's flipping out. And I walked up to him and I said, listen, I'm Mitch Modell. I'll take care of you. Okay. And she goes, what? And with that, she like put her arm around me. And I thought she wanted to marry me. But it was a crazy scenario. And they had to edit it out of the undercover boss. But it was crazy scenario.
That's a good one. All right. Number 5, what brand did you most enjoy partnering with?
Probably Nike. Because, Nike did things a special way. Nike really, again, this is pre-Donahue. This is when Elliott Hill and his team were really running the company. They knew how to treat a retailer. They take us to the Olympics and they take over a house and, or they take us to the Super Bowl or All-Star games, take us out to Portland and, have us in front of Phil Knight. They knew, the real Nike really knew how to treat a customer. And it gave us a chance to really meet other retailers in that setting. And so I would say Nike.
That's a great, I have to say, I wrote that down. The real Nike knew how to treat a customer. That's a great line.
And then, by the way, Elliott, from what I hear, Elliott Hill is trying to bring that back with everybody.
Which is great. It's great. All right, number 6, the hardest lesson you ever learned?
The hardest lesson I ever learned? We should have done our homework better when we decided to expand to Connecticut. We were a New York-based operation. We decided to open up in Boston in 2004. Boston was unbelievable, and it started to be unbelievable. And then we said, you know what? Everyone in Connecticut knows us. Let's open up in Connecticut, fill the gap. This way we go from New York to Connecticut to Boston. We didn't do our homework properly. We should have called other retailers. We didn't understand the East and West, who the Patriot fans are, who the Giant Jet fans are. We couldn't figure it out. And Connecticut killed us, absolutely killed us.
Oh, that's helpful and unfortunate. Number 7, if you could run one retailer today besides Modell's, what would it be?
Costco. I'm a Costco shopper. I go to Costco once a month. I think they're the most fascinating retailer. They understand their customer. They understand, I mean, they're just unbelievable. Their prices are unbelievable. You feel better. I never know what I'm going to buy, but I always spend about $1,000, $2,000 when I walk out. And it's just, they just get it. And I would, in fact, when I walk into a Costco, the first thing I do when I have a shopping cart, I go to the cash register, empty. And I sit there for 5 minutes and see what is everyone buying. And I never knew, like the chicken, the $4.99 rotisserie chicken is the number one item they carry besides towels and toilet paper. I saw people walking out with 2, like, what is this? Oh, you have to try the chicken. Where's the chicken? And it's unbelievable. So
No,
it's really a shopping experience.
Yeah, it's and I think they've it's amazing. They're one of the last, I would say, to the technology table. And where they're so fortunate is right, we're entering this new era of Gen AI and now agentic, and they're able to kind of leapfrog so much spending that others had done. And so it's a fascinating story. And so as good as they are today, I think they can be a lot better, which is also really interesting. All right, number 8, what's one thing retailers often misunderstand about their customers?
You got to live in the stores. I lived in the stores. I love going I said, as long as there are no registers in the home office, everyone's in the stores. And we're not talking about go to your store that's like next to you. Go to the store that's 2 hours from you. But the customers, everything's built around the customers. And you feel it. And to me, every time I go into the stores, I talk to the cashiers. What are the customers saying? What do they like? What do they dislike? The salespeople, what are we out of? What are the customers saying? The customer is king. And the day you disconnect yourself from the customer is the day that you get into trouble.
No, that's well said. Number 9, one word that defines great retail leadership.
Adaptability. You got to be able to adapt to the changing times. You got to embrace change. You got to embrace technology. You got to embrace AI. If you don't study AI and really understand how it's going to affect your business, you're going to be history. But it's really adapting to the environment. How do you adapt to this marketplace with, whether it be tariffs, whether it be the economy, whether it be people, going to different retailers and different options. And, it's having the ability to be nimble, quick, and adapt.
No, it's great. All right. And number 10, what do you miss most about running Modell's?
I miss our associates. And I miss, today I go as a fan, right? So like when the Yankees were in the World Series, we had $25 million on the line. When the Eagles, were going to the Super Bowl, we had $20, $30 million at retail on the line. And so the adrenaline rush, when you're at the game, oh my God, what happens if they lose? I got to call every vendor and say, listen, I pre-printed everything. You got to be my partner. Otherwise the stuff goes, to the third world countries. And so I miss, the little kid coming in for his baseball glove, playing Little League for the first time, trying on the glove, trying on his cleats. The kid who buys his first soccer ball and see the smile on his face. Those are memories that when I tell people I bought my first ball glove there. I bought my first ice skate there. And, it's those kind of things that you miss. And plus the celebrations of championship teams, no matter it was the Ravens or the Patriots or the Celtics or the Giants or the Yankees or the Eagles. There was nothing better. It was just a celebration with fans that really brought cities together.
Well, Mitch, thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful hour to spend with you. And we look forward. I feel there's like a 2.0 here to really understand some of your, kind of wisdom. So thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks.
We love you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Deborah. And thank you for joining us this week. Coresight Research serves our members with timely and focused research, leadership communities, data resources, strategy sprints, and more. Visit us at Coresight.com to learn how joining our community can accelerate your success. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next week.